back again to Fit and Well podcast. Today we're talking all about starting new things and getting into routine, very fitting for our year. I think each and every one of us has been asked this year due to the COVID pandemic to be getting into new routines and trying new things. When was the last time you tried something new or really noticed yourself getting into a new routine?
And good morning. Thanks for having me back, Heather. Last 6 to 8 months has been, I think, a pretty big challenge for a lot of people, just demanding things are done differently. For me, I fell out of routines and had to totally redo them and recreate them. And, for me, it's not always easy. I find routines sometimes very difficult to do, and especially depending what I want to do. But for me, exercise and fitness was the biggest thing. One of the first things that kind of fell off when we couldn't do things as normal. And so that was one of the routines that had to look a lot different. Like a lot of things changed when I worked out, what I used to work out. It was all at home. I was making use of, things I never would have and trying to problem solve and improvise. So there's a lot of problem solving. There was a lot of creativity that had to go into, the more that health and that side of that, my health and wellness, I think.
For me, during this time, I noticed my socialization and my relationship habits really had to adapt and fall into some new routines. The way I was connecting with people, who I was connecting with, that all shifted as well. You mentioned that sometimes you struggle with routine. Are you a habit person? Do you find habits really easy to adapt, or do you struggle developing new habits?
Oh, it's a struggle. Every single one is, yeah. And I wonder, I sometimes sit back and think, like, why is this so difficult? And so for me, it comes down to, it comes down to a grind. And there's a time where it doesn't always just feel like it's a part of, my day to day. And I think, I hear a lot of stories and read a lot about people having adopted these habits and they're just part of who they are and what they do now. I find that takes quite a while for me to do that. So it comes down to just like grit, determination, but also sometimes falling off and then having to revisit it, which is totally something I've come to accept. But yeah, no, it sometimes when I want something to be a routine, it often takes work for me. Yeah.
I found an article from Forbes magazine, and they wrote about some different things that can help with habit forming. So one of them was, for instance, identify what's called your keystone habit. And this was through a book, The Power of Habit. And he says that sometimes we focus on so many habits. We want to drink more water. We're starting college. We are starting new relationships, that if we start with what he considers a keystone habit, this can be helpful to really discover what it is that we're truly wanting. Pick one thing at a time so we're not feeling so overwhelmed. But then this article also explores to find different ways to reward us for getting into those new habits, whether it's something a little bit more tangible or physical. Do you turn to rewards to help with habits?
Yeah, and I often talk to people around like that dopamine hit that we can sometimes get when we achieve something, or even the thought of achieving something and completing a task, an assignment, a fitness goal, whatever, a health wellness goal. And really more educated around even in the last year or so. So for me, it's a relatively new phenomenon that I'm still kind of exploring and getting used to. But no, I like having that awareness now. Like I feel it and I recognize it when that burst of that feel-good hormone comes up, when I think about, why I want to do something and what I'll gain by completing something, what will change positively for me, at this time when I chase this goal or try to implement this routine. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to have that awareness while you're starting to make new routines and to make new habits.
Not only mentioned in this Forbes article by Jennifer Cohen, but also I've seen in many other kind of habit forming resources and articles. So you sometimes hear about making it publicly known so that you're held accountable publicly. Is that a tool that works for you when you kind of share with other people, hey, I'm looking to change this or get into this new routine? Do you find having public accountability helpful?
You know what? I'm more of a keep it on the down low kind of person. I think once I've established, then I'll tell people. And yeah, but that's something interesting to think about because me as a coach, accountability when people want to make a change or do something different is something we talk about. But I guess just the way I do it, no, not so much. But it would be interesting to try because I think it makes a lot of sense. You kind of think for a lot of people that might be a big thing to put it out on social media, and then almost is like, yeah, that's a could be a source of when you're maybe you want to get up early and your alarm goes off, and if you don't do it, it's like, oh, well, I told a lot of people I'd be doing this, and so maybe that could serve as that push to do whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah. And I think what I've seen them speak about is it's less of kind of an announcement. I think that's what many of us initially do is we'll make a Facebook announcement or Instagram announcement that we're maybe trying something new, starting college. But it actually talked more about those very close social bonds that we have, that accountability and announcing are two very different things. And so if we can tap into people, last week we talked about the importance of feeling safe. So again, it's people that you feel very safe with that can be your accountability partners. And so whether it's somebody who's going to go for a run with you perhaps every morning, and so you can kind of hold each other accountable saying, we made this commitment, we're on this journey together. Or for myself, I know I have a friend, I wanted to drink more water every day. And so every once in a while she'll text me and say, how much water have you drank today? And I know it's not coming from a judgmental place. And it's just her way of kind of bringing my awareness back to, hey, I was trying to set this new habit. I was trying to set this new goal. Where am I with that accountability? So I think it's important too that we're not just handing off that power, that it's more of an accountability partner, not just a accountability announcement, which I thought was neat. So joining us today to continue this conversation on starting new things and creating routines and habits, we have Craig Black from the Student Academic Learning Services, otherwise known here at DC as SALS. And he is a learning skills advisor and coach. So that's welcome, Craig.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. I have to ask the usual question of, you can see me and hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Good,
and very
good.
fitting, today we're talking about doing new things, getting into new routines. So there's a beautiful example of some of the new processes we are getting into.
For sure, for sure.
So Craig, your experiences working at SALS and working with students, how common is it for students to struggle with getting into new routines, especially for studying and general college life? Is this something SALS sees often?
For sure. And I think time management and organization is one of the keys. Like even when we get into the study strategies, test and exam preparation, a good chunk of even those specific areas are related back to the stuff that we would have talked about, or we do talk about, I should say, in a time management workshop, an organization workshop, and so on, because that's a huge piece. I could have all the ideas for, let's say, studying or test taking that I want, but if I'm not getting into a routine of actually studying, of actually what are the steps that I need to do to prepare for my tests and so on, then it's going to be pretty hard to be successful. And so time management, all that to say, is a huge piece of what we tend to work with students with, and what students connect with the center in order to get support with.
Do you tend to notice certain common barriers or blocks that students are noticing when they're first trying to get into those routines?
The big challenge is whether you're coming off of summer, you've had a break for classes, whether you're coming from from high school to college. I've just had first year, whatever program. Now I'm going into second year, but I haven't been in class or virtually in class. It's a huge change, and habits are there for a purpose. I have my summer habits. I have my high school habits. And so kind of getting into a new routine, right, is one of the big things that I think most students, deal with. I, had some time off for vacation and now I'm coming back to my job and it seems like everything has changed about it. Well, it's because I was able to sleep in till 10 o'clock every day and now I have to get up or whatever, one silly example there, right? And then I think the other thing is it can be a black box almost, right? So then it's cognitively like, yes, summer ending, school beginning, yes. But especially if I'm a new student, it's like, and what does new school beginning look like? And especially during these times with, things being virtual and so on, but really any year that even if things were in person, it's okay, where do I go for what, how do I connect with, et cetera, right? And so it can be a huge sort of black box, if you will, of how do I get into a routine if I don't know what anything of the future looks like.
Reminds me of that saying, we don't know what we don't know, right? So
Exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And I think that's a huge thing, even connecting, like, we don't know what we don't know, and then we start to go to school or again virtually, whatever, and then sometimes the habit is created for us without us thinking about it. So a big thing that I was going to mention at some point, I think connects to what you're saying. Now I do know what I do know, but I don't think about it still. It just becomes routine like that. Right. And so, none of my classes are until noon, so I can't sleep in. And that's just what I do. I find having a pause after you've been through the new routine for a couple of weeks and then saying, now let me think about what I do know, as opposed to now I know and I'm just going through what I know and what was kind of thrown at me and so on, right? And so nerdy education guy, right? I like metacognition as a I have to pause and think about my thinking,
Yeah.
right? Now I've been in 3 weeks. Like, what should my routine be? And why do I want it that way? What's the end goal beyond, of course, the end goal? I want to be successful in my course. I want to move on to whatever else. But, what's my end goal in this course right now? How do I get there? What are the steps I need to take? And reflecting on that and thinking at, if you will, the higher level that the metacognition is.
Craig, what jumps to my mind right now when you were kind of saying those questions is, and I'm sure Heather can kind of speak to this too, but when we were first meeting with students to identify their health and wellness needs, a lot of people would say, they're overwhelmed, they're frustrated, they're behind on, all the things you kind of touched on, even like it's a new experience, it's a transition, they have to learn all these platforms, and especially now with COVID, right? But what I would often encourage students to do when they were struggling to create a routine, whether it was someone who used to have, their day-to-day set out, but just again, transitions and things are different. So now they're struggling is, not only asking the questions that you had mentioned, but digging a little deeper to find out, well, why are they doing this? What is the purpose it's serving? Because sometimes when and kind of go below the surface like that, you can find that sort of motivation and inspiration to stick with a routine that might be really hard to do at first. Because when you have that sort of understanding about, there is a deeper meaning to me being in college, whether it's to meet your goals, get good grades, good GPA, dean's list, good career, whatever it might be, like going that little bit deeper sometimes, ask you those questions, I found could be pretty effective for some of the students that I had been talking with.
So one of the books I've been reading this summer, and I don't know, am I allowed to drop names of books?
Yeah.
Will it be advertised? So it's funny because you guys had connected me to talk about habits right when I was in the middle of reading this book.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have read that one. It's great with lots of great suggestions, resources. But I also read the book Grit this summer. It's by Angela Duckworth. It was described as, we want to get into some sort of routine. And so we think of like, what are the things I have to do? I have to get up earlier, I have to do this, or I have to do that. And that can be great stuff. But one of the, I think it might have been in Grit, it was not thinking about like You know, I want to do these things. I'll use like going to the gym as an example, right? We tend to think like, I wish I was in better shape. I need to go to the gym. But the goal that I believe that she was using was like, I want to be, not just I want to be in shape, but I want to be something. So, you know, and thinking I am something, and going that bit deeper actually is what I'm trying to spit out here. Of like, the example that came to mind is kind of for myself. So I run a triathlon, you know, once a year or whatever, right? But the like difference, to use that as the example of, am I someone who's like, I want to get in better shape and kind of become better at running, and then I will be a triathlete? Or is it like, I'm a triathlete, no matter how crappy at triathloning I am, I will, you know, I could come in last place, but I am that. And now using that as the, and like, what does a triathlete do? Right? And as much as that's like sports, but like being a student and the end goals that you're talking about, right? And I teach in the nursing program as well, on top of working in sales. And even the way I speak to students, sometimes I don't speak to them like, you know, oh, you're just in first semester, but I talk to them like, when you are a nurse, this is what will happen. And so like, let's look at what you're doing now and why that is the case. And I find even sometimes, like, not that anyone says anything, but you can almost see that shift in thinking along the lines of what you're saying, right? Like, well, as you know, as a nurse, you're going to need to do this. So when you're a nurse, like, this is going to be a great help. And it's, yeah, that positive or deeper mixture of those two things, right? Of like, now I think like a nurse, because I am one, just not yet. Right. And so what would a nurse do? You know, oh, a nurse would do this, or whatever program, you know, that you'd be thinking of, and then setting the stage for that, even though it's officially down the road, setting that stage now and saying, I'm going to need to manage my time. Right? Like, I can't show up at the hospital willy-nilly whenever I feel like it, right? I'm going to have shifts that I need to take care of. I'm going to have life outside the hospital that I'm going to need to take care of. How do I manage that time? Well, right now is the time to start getting those skills, learning those skills, and improving and so on, right?
It reminds me of that book. I cannot pronounce his last name. Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek. Yep. Start with your why. Yep. It reminds me of that idea. We often start with the how or the what. I want to get into the gym more, and I need to do this. But really, like you were saying, from that kind of more meta. How do you pronounce that word?
Metacognition.
Metacognition place. Or last week we talked with the mind-body connection. We used the word awareness, right? So really cultivating that deeper sense of, why am I wanting this habit, might be a better place to start than those more tangible, what do I need to do?
Yeah. And we need to start a book club, because actually, now that you say that, it might have been that book that I was reading this summer that I got it from. I'm on to the Infinite Game right now. And yeah.
Book club to come.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Craig, what are some ways that students can start this process? What would you recommend as some different strategies to help students start getting into routine?
Yeah, so one of the big ones I tend to go to, I mentioned already, and I'll throw a few others out there, but is there's still time left in this semester, in the sense of analyzing, you know, where you've come from, what's coming up, and so on. And so having a pause there and saying, you know, let me look at it all, if you will. And I know that can seem overwhelming, but now that the box, if you will, is not quite as unknown as it was 5 weeks ago, kind of just let me think about it from that standpoint, and thinking about, what do I need to do? Because even among the three of us, it's going to look different for each of us. Right. And I think sort of using that as a springboard, if you will, to one of the points I'd make is thinking about, what habits do I need to start implementing? Don't bite off more than you can chew, to use the saying, right? But like, even just picking a couple that would be good for you to begin down that path of a new routine is one of the major things that I would say. But then the two I would pick, and the two you would pick, Heather, and the two you would pick, Jamie, are going to be different from each other based on where we're at. right? So one of the things we often talk about time management in SALs in terms of picking a time of day for studying as a specific example, right? So if somebody said, okay, I want to start studying more. Not that that's the greatest, that would be a good metacognitive, I need to start studying more. What will I do about it? But in terms of a strategy that I would pick, I would be saying, go deeper, as Jamie said, like, what time of day are you studying? Right? Like, how long are you studying? And for each individual course, how much time are you studying? Because that's going to be different. And how are you studying? Because my bio class and my, math class are going to be very different from each other in terms of the different style of activities that I do and so on. Right. And so, yeah, big picture, as I said, like thinking about, what do I need to maybe develop, improve upon, and then starting to break it down for the individual and say, how much time, what time of day, right? I'm someone who gets up early and gets going most days anyways, right? And I tell people, oh, I wake up 6:30 and then I go do, this and that. And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm not saying you have to get up at 6:30. Right? If your response to, oh my gosh, how do you possibly get up that early is, if that's your response, then don't do it, right? If you're the night owl or whatever the case is, right? Those would be the strategies that I would start to like lay over top of that, right? And how do I get into routine in terms of setting up those times so that they're easy to transition to, right? So that it's not a well, the example I usually use is like, I have my binder with my notes in it and it's nice and organized so that when I say I'm going to study math for a half an hour, I don't spend an entire half an hour just trying to find my notes and what the heck I'm supposed to do. And then a half an hour's gone by and you're like, okay, well, epic fail. I have not done any math and I'm only somewhat more organized and, I'm sort of painting an extreme picture, but we all get into that kind of, or have those challenges, I should say, at times, right? And so making the transition, just like the transition to school was difficult, we mentioned, right? Make the transition into each new step of the day as easy as possible by, stuff is organized for myself. I read in one of the books, I think it might have been The Atomic Habits of, someone who says, I want to read more. So what I do first thing in the morning is I put my book on my pillow. It's so much easier than when I go to transition later on in the day, right? To just, there's my book, and I don't hold on to my phone because my book is right here and it's easy, as opposed to I climbed in bed and, music, picking on phones now, but I get on my phone and the book is way across the room and that's so much effort to go get, and I'll just stay on this. And right. So unrelated to necessarily studying and so on, but getting in the habit by making it easy to access stuff when it does come time to do what I want to do.
Setting yourselves up for success and Post-it notes. Yeah.
For the longest time, I had one in my bathroom mirror. So of course, every morning, go to the bathroom, get ready, and there it is. Hey, there it is.
there they are, Jamie. That's how awful.
Yeah. Sometimes I need the small ones. Sometimes I need the regular size ones. Sometimes I need the big ones. Yeah.
For sure. Another thing is breaking things down is another huge thing that I'd say. In terms of Post-it notes, I don't know if you how you tend to set them up, but like they're great for breaking things down. I think one thing that's a challenge with students is we say, whatever it is on your Post-it note, like do homework for math, write essay, whatever else. But if I put, write essay, and then I have small bullet points, or if you will, of like, come up with topic, write outline, write introduction, etc. Break it down into whatever number of things, as long as you're not overwhelming yourself. Then the thing is, it's also easier to transition, if you will, like we were saying, when you say, all right, I have a half an hour here, I can figure out what topic I'm going to choose. I can go read some, some books or go online, whatever. And then you finish that after the half an hour and you're done that one chunk. But if you say, I have a half an hour right now, what can I do? Essay, all my math homework, whatever's on your to-do list there, then it's going to be like, I can't get that done in a half an hour. I'll do it later.
And I think that's really important too, because And I've seen that with a lot of students too, is when you do that and you break things down, and like you said, that's a perfect example of, instead of write essay, do the outline, find research materials, whatever it is, and then it's kind of like check. There's a sense of accomplishment there too. There's a sense of getting things done. There's a sense of progress, a tangible sense at that too. It's a healthy, it fosters a healthy mindset for that stuff too. And then they can use that for assignments again in the future. And again, it helps with motivation and just sticking to those plans, to those agendas. And it can be really helpful.
And I think efficiency is a huge thing too. So a couple of years ago, I had way too many jobs. I got a contract to create a course. And it seems very odd, and I may sound silly to some, but I had a Post-it note that was like, a little checkbox, and it said, make PowerPoint. And then the next checkbox said, edit PowerPoint. And then the next checkbox said, record video. Next one, edit video, etc., etc. And it seems like, well, duh, I made whatever number of units it was, 15 units, that all had those exact same steps. And the days I should say that I didn't put that there, I wasted a lot of time sitting at my computer, kind of jumping around like, what do I need to do next? What's next? As silly as it seems, it was like right there. Okay, yeah, I've done the PowerPoints, and now I'm going to edit it. Now I'm going to boom, boom, boom. And then later on in the day, if I was going to work on it, I know where I'm at with that. Again, kind of like my binder full of random papers aspect. I don't have to figure out where I was at. And then as a little aside, as the nerdy anatomy physiology guy in SALS, I don't know if you tend to put little boxes on your page so that you can actually put a little check mark in there. There are people, maybe nerdier than me from an anatomy physiology standpoint, but who have done research that shows that when you put a little check mark in that box, your brain releases endorphins, which are the feel-good hormone. And so exactly what you were saying there, Jamie, of like, I feel accomplished, I feel like whatever, right? A load off your shoulders or whatever the case is. It's like, yep, thank you, endorphins.
And what research shows us with that as well is it's not just the larger achievement that we should be waiting for, that those smaller releases of endorphins is actually more beneficial. So by breaking it down and being able to give that check mark, giving us that release of endorphins and feel good hormones, then it actually helps us continue with that growth mindset and accomplish our tasks.
That's
so just waiting for the essay being done.
Yeah, what's better than one check mark for essay being done? 10 check marks, a couple each day of, yep, outline is done, yep, edit is done, whatever the case is.
Craig, how can students get connected to SALS to explore this a little bit more and get connected to some of your other fantastic services at SALS?
For sure. So there's a couple of ways. With COVID, we're actually, all our services are remote at this point. Major key thing to do would be to call SALS. So it is the regular college number of 905-721-2000. To press the number sign and then 2491. If you don't hit the number sign, you'll be talking to financial aid and very confused, I think. So yes, number sign 2491, or you can email us at sals@durhamcollege.ca.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Craig. Thanks for sharing with us some great insight into getting into routine. And we hope students are able to get connected and learn a little bit more. So thank you.
Thank you guys for doing this and for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Take care, Craig.
Bye. So Jamie, did anything that Craig shared really resonate with you, connect with you? What were some of your thoughts from Craig's sharing?
The importance of understanding or just knowing that, there is a transition happening right now. Yes, it can be overwhelming, and just to normalize these things, that they're not the only ones. So often students think that, I should be doing better. There's a lot of expectations. Maybe things are harder this year than they ever have been. So, just kind of digging down a little bit more, asking those questions, to kind of help them gain that understanding, that clarity, that insight. And so it's kind of sometimes making little changes to our perspectives and to our expectations that I've seen, I think, help a lot of people just get organized, stay organized, follow a routine, be successful in whatever ways that means to them. So
Well, I hope for students that are watching this podcast episode on getting into routine, whether it's a health and wellness related routine, starting a new exercise program, healthy eating, or study habits, that today you were able to pull a couple tips and tricks to help you as you're adjusting into some new things. Thanks so much for today, Jamie. On that note, we'll see you next time. Stay fit and stay well.